Hello everybody. Today we'll be studying the poem A Bird Came Down the Walk by Emily Dickinson. So our poet here is a very famous American poet because her work was very new for the time and used a different style and a different perspective on the world, and so her work is very interesting. So let's jump straight into the poem. A bird came down the walk. He did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank a dew from a convenient grass, and then hopped sideways to the wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all abroad. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. He stirred his velvet head, like one in danger, cautious. I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rowed him softer home than oars divide the ocean, too silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap, plashless as they swim. So I think we should all be able to tell what this poem is basically about. I think we all know that it's about a bird, and that what's described in the poem are simply the poet's observations as she watches this bird. So if we want to look at it a bit closer, we can break the poem up into two parts almost. The first part, these first two stanzas here, which are the observations made about the bird before it notices someone's watching it. Okay? And then the second part are the remaining three stanzas, and they're how the bird reacts to the observer. Now, this is actually one of the key features of Emily Dickinson's writing. Her first-person poems often have a very keen observer. Okay, they're looking very closely at their environment and their surroundings, and that's what's one of the appealing features of Emily Dickinson's writing, is how detailed and specific her poems are when they're describing an ordinary scene. Like, we all are able to look out a window and see a bird hopping about on the floor, but if we wrote about that, it wouldn't become famous, really. But Emily Dickinson here has done exactly that, and this is a very famous poem because she's able to describe the scene in such particular detail that impressed a lot of people in her time and still today. So that's why we're exploring this poem, is because she's been able to describe such an ordinary scene in such a beautiful way. So some way she does this is if we return to the first stanza, you see, a bird came down the walk, he did not know I saw. Do we notice there, with this word he, that Dickinson is employing personification here? So personification is the technique where something that's not human is given human-like qualities. So this bird is not an it, it's a he. So already she's building up our connection with this bird and making this simple bird seem more important. Okay. So, he did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. So you can see there's a bit of a rhyme scheme here, but the rhyme scheme is not always met. So I guess we'll talk about this. She uses slant rhyme, so that's sometimes it rhymes and sometimes it doesn't. So for example, if we look at here, abroad and head, those don't really rhyme. They're sort of sounding the same, but they're not perfect rhymes. So that's called slant rhyme. So Dickinson is not doing a strict rhyme scheme here. It's a bit weak at some points. And again, that's just her style. Okay, and it's her style as well to capitalize all the nouns. She just does that. She just likes that. Anyway, returning back to the poem. I guess this is a nice little image here. It's just some visual imagery. We have our bird hopping sidewise to the wall to let a beetle pass. Okay, so this is just a nice little picture that the poet is creating, and it makes us feel more connected to that bird. It's a very polite, nice bird that moves out of the way to let a beetle pass. Okay, it's a silly scene that is probably not real, but Dickinson has when she's looked at this bird, she's imagining that in her head. Okay, and that's creating a more intriguing scene. Now, if we move on to this third stanza, I should say, the bird has noticed us observing it. Okay, he glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all abroad. They looked like frightened beads, I thought. So we can see frightened beads, like frightened beads. It was a simile. Okay, we're saying the eyes look like something else. And he stirred his velvet head. Like one in danger, cautious, I offered him a crumb. Okay, so we're now trying to feed him something, and he unrolled his feathers. Now this part of the poem is the very famous part. Okay, if a lot of people like to talk about this last stanza and a half. Okay, it's very famous. So he unrolled his feathers. So a bird's unrolling its feathers, it's because it's going to fly away. Okay, so we try to offer him a crumb, but he flies away. He unrolled his feathers and rode him he unrolled his feathers and rode him softer home than oars divide the ocean. Okay, so that's so we have an analogy here with the bird unrolling its feathers and flying away. That's like rowing, okay, and it rowed him softer home than oars divide the ocean. So here Dickinson is painting a picture of the bird rowing itself away in a way that's smoother and softer than oars divide the ocean. Okay, to silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon. So she's saying the bird flying away is rowing him home softer than butterflies flying off banks of noon. Okay, and the birds leap plashless as they swim. So the way they swim through the sky is plashless or splashless. Okay, there's making no sound, making no mess. There's no splashing of water. It's just super neat and clean, and they just fly away. Okay, so this final part of this poem is just a beautiful way of looking at a bird flying. Okay, it's rowing away softly. It's so smooth and fluid, and shows how free the bird is to move about. Okay, so this poem is really just enjoying the sights of nature and the beauty of nature. Okay, so a little technique I've just noticed now as well in this line here, rode him softer home. Can we see the repetition of the O sound or the O sound? Rode, softer, home. The repetition of that vowel sound is called assonance. Okay, so the repetition of a vowel sound is assonance. Okay, so just a final summary of the poem. We've got here a poet observing a bird on the path, and she just describes the scene in perfect clarity by employing a lot of nice details that make the poem enjoyable to read, and finishes with a very beautiful description of a bird flying away that really appreciates how wonderful nature is. And this last stanza and a bit is really the famous part of this poem and what makes it so impressive. So thank you for watching this video.